Hey, what's up, everybody? Ralph here. So today's topic, I ran across this article on Business Insider talking about colleges jacking up tuition, and it could intensify the student debt crisis. So it's just crazy, especially with inflation. So you kind of understand why everything is going up. But the question I have is, like, for those that are still, obviously, deciding to go to school and take on these massive amount of debt, it gets to a point where, like, when is enough enough? Like, you obviously see that there's a crisis. You see other people complaining about the student debt crisis, and the fact that people are going to, these colleges are going to be jacking up tuitions. If you're someone that's still applying for these loans and you're probably participating, or you're working on a degree that's not going to net you a good high income, it gets to a point where, like, when are you going to get it and understand that it is not worth it? And not just knock education, because education is important, but you got to really understand the benefit and the cost of obtaining these degrees. Sometimes taking on this massive debt is just not worth it in the long run. And if you have friends and family that are struggling with debt, then you need to understand that this is a struggle, and you really need to, like, think hard if it's worth going to these four-year institutions or any institution where you're gonna be taking on a massive amount of debt. You got to come up with a different way. Right? But let me just read the article so we just see what they're saying and how this is affecting a lot of people. So, all right, so the price tag to attend college is about to get even heftier. That's because inflation has hit campuses. According to John Marcus from nonprofit news organization, the Hettinger report, many universities are hiking tuition and fees along with a meal plan and boarding dues to cover rising operational costs and higher salaries for faculty during the labor shortage, he wrote. All right, so the bigger bills are likely to hurt students from lower income backgrounds and add to the student debt crisis, coming at a time when many families haven't yet recovered from the financial hardship and pandemic. Families in their earnings haven't fully recovered yet, especially as the student population we're more focused on today tends to be first generation, lower socioeconomic status, more diverse. David Jewell, the senior vice president of business affairs and finance at Cleveland State University, told Marcus of price hikes, which Jewell is trying to avoid implementing. But he added, we've never dealt with this level of inflationary pressures in this kind of extreme competitive labor market. Some colleges are set to raise their rates for an upcoming school year, while others already have, ranging from 9% increases in meal plan costs to 4.5% tuition increases. The University of Virginia, for example, plans to increase undergraduate tuition and fees by 4.7% next year and again by 3.7% in the following year. All right, so you can see these things are going up. Obviously, it's not going up the level of inflation, which is good, but still, it's going up. It's just going to make the whole student debt crisis even worse. And and that's the thing. When you think of a business just can't just jack up a price, right? Like if you have a local business and they just all of a sudden just jack up the price, then people aren't going to go to that store, right? So there's no business person that's going to be like, all right, let me just jack up the price because people won't pay. But if they knew that they were guaranteed for customers to make, to purchase from their business, regardless of how high they jacked up the prices, then of course that's what a business is going to do. And that's what's happened with college. They know, because these institutions know that since these loans are backed by the government, they can increase these prices because they know they're going to get their money, right? That cost is going to fall on the student. All right, so once they jack up the price, the government's going to back these loans, and the person that's going to be left holding back are the borrowers. And that's the problem. If you remove the government and take them out and make these institutions, at more risk when it comes to these loans, that would drive down costs, because if they jack up the price, less people are going to say, oh, I can't afford to go to college. So what they'll do is drive down the prices and then bring it to a more reasonable cost, or just people just won't go. So I think because they know that these loans are backed by the government, they're jacking the price because they know it's guaranteed money. So, I mean, it only makes sense for them to do it, right? So as Marcus points out, many of these increases are below the current 7% rate of inflation, but it's on the heels of a year in which tuition remained relatively stable and which enrollment has dropped. U.S. colleges have seen 1.5 million decline in students enrolled over the past 5 years, with men accounting for 71% of that decline, right? And I think last time, if I'm not mistaken, I think 2/3 of student debt is held by women, all right? So men are, I guess, realizing, like, it's really not worth it. But of course, a lot of women want to get the degrees, very independent. They want to make sure they get the education. They're like, I'm willing to take on the loan. But then now a lot of them are complaining that they can't afford it, that they can't live their lives, they can't get married, they can't buy a house because of all this debt. So I mean, it gets to a point where you got to get to a point where you're understanding, like you signed for this document and you knew how much it costs, and now you're coming back and saying, oh, I can't afford it. So if this isn't a sign that people need to understand that, maybe you need to reassess, if is it worth going to college. And as you can see, less people are going, but I think most of it, obviously the majority are men, but I think more people are realizing it's just not worth it anymore. All right. So, okay, so the news also comes in the middle of a standstill on the federal government canceling student loan debt. The national student debt total has climbed to a roaring 1.7 trillion, preventing millions of Americans from making big financial decisions like buying a house. President Joe Biden promised the campaign trail that he would wipe out $10,000 in federal student debt for every borrower. Elizabeth Warren, blah, blah, blah. We already know what she said. So tuition price hikes would only add fuel to the fire, increasing debt load of current student borrowers and promising bigger loans for future students who can't afford the upfront cost of college. It's another blow to advocates fighting to erase student debt, especially as the 2-year plus freeze on federal student loan payments and zero interest is set to expire in May 1st. Now, the price of education only continues to climb. In the 2010s, the cost of college had already more than doubled since the 1980s, accounting for inflation. Thanks to a surge in demand and increase in inflation aid, lack of state funding, a need for more faculty members and money to pay them, and ballooning student services, the current state of a pandemic economy is only intensifying the situation. It's enough to make both students and experts value a degree, even factoring in the typical higher wages for college graduates. The advantage of a degree today is less than it was 10 years ago. I'll repeat that again. The advantage of a degree today is less than it was 10 years ago because of the rising costs. Richard Vedder, an author of Distinguished Professor in Master's Economics of Ohio University, blah, blah. The return on investment has fallen. So I think a lot of people are understanding or realizing that that it's just not worth it to go to these institutions. If you're gonna take on a $100,000 loan, and you're gonna net only a $50,000 job, $50,000 income job, it's just not worth it. You're not getting a return on investment. And I think a lot of people are realizing that. Obviously, less people are going to these schools, but people need to really understand that they're jacking these prices because obviously government is guaranteeing the funding, and people need to get to a point where you're saying, it's not worth it anymore. I'm going to find a different way to educate myself, or just find different ways, because leaving college with that amount of debt can really stunt your growth going forward. It takes away everything that you want to do, whether it comes to buying a house, whether it's starting a business or starting a family. It makes it more difficult because obviously you have money that's tied up in something else. And you could be using that money to do something more manageable, more progressive, like more helpful to helping you build financial wealth in the future. But if you have a debt that's in the 100,000, then it's just gonna make it that much more difficult. Right? So that's all I got for you guys today. If you got any comments, questions, leave a comment down below. Hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Right? So you guys take care and have a good one. Later.